Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to BBC News. 19 members of an elite fire crew have been killed while battling wildfires in Arizona. President Obama has described them as heroes who put themselves in harm's way to protect others. The men were trying to protect a small town when they were overwhelmed by the blaze, which tripled in size in just a few hours. The fires were sparked by lightning during record high temperatures in the area, as our correspondent Nick Childs reports. Well, these are just some of the images of the raging wildfires the firefighters were trying to contain when they died. And you can see the blaze spread quickly, the men trying to protect themselves from the flames under fire-resistant shields. Right now we're going to cross to our correspondent Johnny Diamond, who's at the scene live. Sorry, not at the scene, but he's in Washington for us now. And one imagines, Johnny, a community in utter shock today. Chinese lanterns are being blamed for a huge fire at a plastics recycling plant in Smethwick. The BBC has been over-generous in its payoffs to management staff who've left the organisation. That's according to the National Audit Office.
Well, in 3 years, the BBC spent £25 million on severance payments to 150 staff, in some cases paying out more than was contractually required. However, the auditors say the BBC still saved money by cutting jobs. So thanks very much for that. Thank you.
16 minutes past 2. These are our headlines then on BBC News. France, Greece and Italy have been the targets of US spying operations. That's according to the latest leaked files reported in a national newspaper. Citing a document by the National Security Agency, The Guardian says America's non-European allies were also targeted. Well, our correspondent Steve Evans is in Berlin. Have we had it confirmed, Steve, that Europe does not engage in this kind of spying on the US? 23 minutes past 2. In Egypt, at least 8 people are thought to have been killed in clashes outside the headquarters of the ruling party in Cairo. There have been huge demonstrations in the city and elsewhere to mark the first anniversary of the President Mohamed Morsi taking power. Our Middle East editor Jeremy Byrne reports now from Cairo.
We'll be back there in the next few minutes. First, though, the National Housing Federation is warning the government that the consequences of changes to housing benefit are far worse than it initially feared. The body, which represents housing associations, says the so-called bedroom tax is leading to a surge in rent arrears and more empty homes. Our correspondent Michael Buchanan has this report.
Well, this is BBC News. Coming up in the next few minutes, this is BBC News with Matthew Amriliwala and me, Emily Maitlis.
Let's have a look at our main headlines here.
So what is happening at Wimbledon? Let's catch up with the sport now from the BBC Sports Centre. Here's Francis. Hi there. Now, as we've been hearing, the Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg said the public would find it impossible to understand a £10,000 increase in MPs' pay. His comments come after reports that the Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, which sets salary levels at Westminster, is to recommend a substantial rise late this week. But how do MP salaries compare with other jobs in the public sector? Well, the basic salary for an MP is currently just over £66,000 a year, but they can claim expenses and also receive extra cash from outside work. To drive a pink Bentley at a time that they really prefer not to be seen in one. Norman, that you talk about, you know, the public and political pressure, and as I've just read out, the average salary for a local council chief executive is nearly, well, 2.5 times that of an MP. In the health service, it's much higher. A lot of people could stand back and say, well, what on earth is wrong with bringing it into line with other public sector workers?
Well, thanks for your time. Thank you.
Some breaking news from Wimbledon, but there'll be a lot of disappointed people there. Laura Robson.
She very quickly departs, nothing like Friday when she won that third-round match. But Laura Robson out of Wimbledon, so just Andy Murray left in terms of the last Britain stand.
Oh, the pressure. Nothing like it. Let's bring you up to date with our headlines in 12 minutes to 3. Every day, British businesses are under cyber attack and face industrial espionage on a massive scale, according to the head of the intelligence agency, GCHQ. So just who is watching who? Well, the US has accused China of being behind many of the attacks, but British and American agencies have also faced accusations of cyber spying. Our security correspondent, Gordon Carrera, has this report.
Now, payday lenders are meeting regulators and government ministers to tackle the problem of irresponsible lending. They're looking at whether more can be done to clamp down on the problems in the £2 billion industry.
The meeting comes days after the sector was referred for an in-depth investigation by the Competition Commission. And joining us now from Westminster is the Labour MP Stella Creasy, who's mounted a long-running campaign for so-called payday loan companies. This issue, but it doesn't feel like it's actually getting any easier, is it? Do you feel that you are making progress here? isn't the point with, as you put, so many angles to a cap that the industry can always get round one by increasing the other?
Well, that's exactly why I want to see total cost capping, because that's every single possible charge they could put on a loan put into one cap.
Now, before we check on the weather, let me just show you the live pictures from Egypt. We will be back with our correspondent to get the latest on that story here after 3 o'clock.
Right now, though, Nick Miller has the glorious task of saying something nice about the weather for us. 19 members of an elite fire crew have been killed battling a wildfire in Arizona. President Obama has described them as heroes who put themselves in harm's way to protect others. The men were trying to protect a small town when they were overwhelmed by the blaze, which tripled in size in just a few hours. The fires were sparked by lightning during record high temperatures in the area, as our correspondent Nick Childs reports.
A fearsome inferno of flame and smoke, fanned by gusting winds and fuelled by tinder-dry brush and...
Well, these are just some of the images of the raging wildfires the firefighters were trying to contain when they died. And you can see the blaze spread so quickly. The men tried to protect themselves from the flames under these fire-resistant shields. At least 200 homes have been destroyed. Dozens of families have now been evacuated from Yarnell. That's just outside Phoenix. President Obama has expressed his condolences to the families of those who were killed. He says the federal government is assisting state and local officials. Well, it's now the deadliest US wildfire involving firefighters in 80 years. Put at risk, but they acknowledged the BBC did save money by cutting around a quarter of the management posts. An extradition hearing for a man accused of the honeymoon murder of his wife in South Africa has now begun.
Now let's move to Egypt, where at least 8 people are thought to have been killed in clashes outside the headquarters of the ruling party in Cairo. There have been huge demonstrations in the city and elsewhere to mark the first anniversary of President Mohamed Morsi taking power. And in the past few minutes, there have been reports that the Egyptian armed forces will issue a statement a little later today.
They're creeping up to 3:15. These are our headlines on BBC News.
Francis, thanks very much. Thank you.
President Obama has arrived in Tanzania. This is his third and final stop on the tour of Africa. As well as holding talks with President Kikwete, he'll be meeting business leaders and visiting an American-owned power plant.
Well, he's just started a news conference. Going to hear across the President, apologies to pull out so quickly, but we're going to go to centre court because a big shock there at Wimbledon.
The National Housing Federation's warning the government that the consequences of changes to housing benefit are far worse than it initially feared. The body, which represents housing associations, says there's been a surge in rent arrears. Our correspondent Michael Buchanan reports. France, Greece and Italy have been the targets of US spying operations, according to the latest leaked files reported in a national newspaper. Citing a document by the National Security Agency, the Guardian says America's non-European allies were also targeted. It's just an allegation, but what would they have been looking for? Fernando speaking to Matthew a little bit earlier. Well, this is BBC News, and coming up in the next few minutes... Big shock at Wimbledon. Serena Williams, the #1 seed, is knocked out in the women's competition.
We'll get the latest from Wimbledon in the next few minutes. Now, though, let us